Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We've got Nick Farabaugh on today. I want to talk to Nick about the 2023 draft class and why it's put up or shut up here and what to expect from that group. Well, let's take another question from the call-in line about Will Howard and some advanced stats on the Steelers schedule that show they might have a tougher road than even we expected before, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And so forward to the man himself, Nick Farabaugh. Nick is back from PennLive.com. Nick, another week down here. Well, I guess we're not down a week yet. We're in the middle of the week. It's the Wednesday episode. But this time next week, the Steelers will be in OTA. So there's at least excitement about that. And while all eyes will be on the rookies, I'm going to be looking especially close, and not just now, but throughout the rest of the, lead up to the season and during the season, at the third-year players that were selected in the 2023 NFL draft class. That, of course, Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr., Keeanu Benton, Darnell Washington, Nick Herbig, but especially those first three, Jones, Porter, and Benton. Those are going to be essential in my eyes to the development of this team, this nucleus. This is also Omar Khan's first draft class. And to me, they need at least two of those three. They probably need three of those three. But if they can get at least two of those three to be pillar players moving forward, guys that they can depend upon with nice, sizable veteran contracts to extend their careers in Pittsburgh, that would be a hit. If they can get all three, it'd be awesome. But what is the likelihood in your mind, Nick, that this could be a class that does deliver in that way?
Well, they're uber talented. I think the issue is, I think all three of them in some ways went the wrong way last year, right? There was stagnation in some of these guys. Joey with the penalties, Broderick with the pass pro struggles, Benton with his run defense. Like, there were just stagnation issues that we had talked about, and we thought, oh, they're going to fix them leap time, right? And then it just didn't fully materialize. And so I think there's a possibility that these guys can have that leap. I think, and I have been super high on Keeanu Benton since they drafted him. I think ideally him and Derek Harmon on your 1-2 for the future, and you got your D-line, your nucleus on your defensive line built for post-Cam Hayward era. This is kind of what they've been doing. I like Keeanu Benton, so I think he actually is probably the likeliest. I don't think he's that far off taking that leap. Joey just needs to focus. I think that's the thing. He just needs to be consistent. He is dominant at times. Other times he's grabbing guys all around when he doesn't need to. He could play a little undisciplined, but he's a football competitor. He's improved his tackling, which tells me the coachability and the want to improve is all there. And I know Joey very well. Joey is the type of mental makeup guy that will improve, I think. So I think there's upside there. I think the biggest question to me out of those three is actually Broderick Jones, Chris. I really do. We've talked about the management of Broderick for years, playing him at right tackle versus left, flipping him around, doing all these things. But when it comes down to it, now he's in year 3. He's going to play on the left side finally. And that is going to be his natural position, if you want to call it that, the natural spot, the one he played in college. And last year, it just wasn't the what you wanted to see, right? He had a great year his rookie year as a run blocker, even if he struggled in pass pro. But last year it was all over the place. He had that thumb hand injury that bothered him all year. But, I mean, you look at the stats from a pass pro standpoint. I mean, this guy allowed 11 sacks last year. That was second most in the NFL, only behind Dan Moore. And before the bye, he allowed 21 pressures on top of those sacks. He allowed 24 after the bye in 9 games. So he was still allowing pressures, even though he only allowed 4 sacks compared to allowing a lot more before the bye. So there were still pass pro struggles, but I thought it was better down the stretch. I actually thought he had a really good game against Washington. I thought the Philly game wasn't bad. KC, he was pretty good too in pass pro. So there were encouraging signs from Broderick, but still would like to see the consistency. I think that's the big thing I want to see with all three of these guys. And I've actually think we've seen consistency out of Washington and Herbig, right? I think those two
Which is kind of crazy, right?
are like pretty consistent. Like I know what Nick Herbig is. I know what Darnell is. And even if those guys are not going to be star players, they're winning players. Like you can build team and specific roles out of those guys. But I need consistency out of Benton. I need definite consistency out of Joey. Joey has highs and lows, very high. He's the most volatile of these players. Performance. And Broderick, I think we need to see the floor raised. I think that's what I need to see with Broderick. I need the floor that was there his rookie year because he was all over the place last year. But we know all three of these guys are really talented, but they need some of these guys to get consistent and take leaps from just being solid to being, okay, we are going to give you big contracts because this money has to go somewhere. They got a lot of money in futures. It's got to go somewhere.
And that's my thing here, Nick. When I look at guys like Broderick Jones had some games where he was like, okay, if that's what he does, like I think it was against the Chargers, he looked pretty solid. If that's what he does well, then okay, he is that's the guy that you drafted in the first round. That's why you traded up to get him. He is that guy. But then he's had some games you're like, oh boy, he can't even get his hands on some of these speed rushers. And so it's about eliminating, like you said, eliminating those pitfalls that go beneath his floor that kind of send us, okay, if Broderick has a bad game for Broderick Jones is not a destructive game at left tackle. It just means he didn't dominate the way that we can see him dominate. If he does that, I think he's well on his way to being the guy. But let's also remember, this was part of what was known about Broderick Jones when they drafted him. He was 21 years old. He was extremely raw. He didn't play a whole lot in college, and it was his prototypical build and his athleticism that everyone's like, we need that in the room, because if you can get that and he can put it together, he's going to be a monster. And if he does that, then you can get that going, but you need to see that start to take shape. And again, he is younger than all the other offensive linemen they drafted. Mason McCormick, Troy Fautanu, Zach Frazier, all older than Broderick Jones. But that's where they need him to step up. I agree with you there. And Joey Porter Jr., I think it's even as simple as so many times when you watch Joey Porter Jr. play and be in coverage, when he's running with guys, there's times where he committed penalties where he was in perfect position. He blanketed a guy, ran with him step for step. He was in position to jump for the ball and turn and look. And instead, he would just turn and grab the guy. And it's like, why? Don't do that. And I think it's that confidence that he needs to show, the Steelers need to see in him moving forward. And if he can get that part of his game to be a consistent factor, then he is that guy. The only thing I think about Keeanu Benton that he really needs to work on is just when he gets double teamed, he needs to learn how to anchor himself, get low, and make sure that they can't push him out of the way. That he's like, hey, if there's two of you, I'm keeping both of you right here. Or if at most you're moving me back a yard, but you're not blowing me up and then chipping to the backer. We're keeping Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson, Cole Holcomb, whoever, Malik Harrison, whoever's the off-ball linebacker behind him, his job is to keep them clean when they're double teaming, because that's something the Ravens take advantage of in the playoffs and they have to take away. But those are the three big guys. If those guys make it work and they are able to figure those things out, Broderick Jones with his pass protection, Joey Porter with his penalties, Benton with his facing double teams, that does so much for this team. And I know that it's not sexy. It's not the new franchise quarterback. It's not a 2,000-yard wide receiver. But those are the building block things that make a good team. And when you have that good team, then you can start to be towards that great team. I think the Steelers have been good. And that's the thing, is that they've had these weaknesses at those positions while being good. Now, if those positions become stronger, that's the stuff that can make you even more competitive.
Yeah, I think three things that stand out to me about these guys. One, I just want Broderick to do the right thing play to play too. Like he had a lot of mental errors and just not doing the right thing. He would remember, I mean, the viral one is when he pulled when he shouldn't have during the playoff game, but there were a lot of those on run tape. I just want that there, right? With Joey, you talk about running stride for stride. There are other times where he's at the line of scrimmage and just blatantly yanks a guy down. Like that, there's no reason to do that. You know what I mean? It's almost like he's manhandling these guys. And I get being physical, but it's not that era of football. You got to be smart. It's just like, why are you doing that? It's a free 5 yards. You don't need to do that. So Joey, just with the consistency penalty wise, and then Benton, you talk about the double teams. I've noticed something when you watch Keeanu Benton and he knows he's going to face a double team, Chris, he takes like 2 bunny hops back right even before contact. He like gives up ground. I want to see him get that shoulder in there and really wedge himself in between that double team, because he can do it. He's got really good flexibility. He's very strong. He's extremely strong. So I would like to see that. And I mean, this whole class really is really interesting because we talked about Darnell and Herbig. Those were two guys that were all over the map their rookie year. And then we were saying, okay, can we get consistency from them? And then year two, we got that consistency. If you look at the blocking tape from down to down from Washington, super consistent last year. Herbig with his pass rush, super consistent. Never going to be an elite run defender, but as a pass rusher, you know what you're going to get from Nick Herbig. Corey Trice, I think you could throw in the same boat as the other three we've talked about. He's obviously a 7th-round pick, but we saw some encouraging things against him. We saw him get cooked by Jamar Chase, but in your first start, if your first challenge is Jamar Chase, and you at least put up some good reps like he did, I'll use it as encouragement. So I'm also interested to see what we see out of Corey Trice on top of that, because he could be the gem of the class that kind of makes it even better if he comes together and says, wow, we got a piece here in Corey Trice and can stay healthy. Of course, that's a big thing for him, but I can't say anything enough for those top 3 guys. Consistency, and as Mike Tomlin says, do the basics, right? Just do the routine things routinely. Broderick Jones, get your mental snap count right, get your plays right, all that thing, and then we can focus on the technical aspects. With Joey, just don't commit egregious penalties when they're not. For Keeanu Benton, I think that's actually more technique down to down. So a few things for those guys to work on, but obviously could be huge building blocks if they come out this year and become legitimate players.
You got those building blocks, and like you said, there's the compliments of the class: Washington, Herbig, Trice, even Anderson as a depth offensive lineman. This could still be a great class for Omar Khan to start his legacy with, but it's up to the players to prove him right. Will they? We'll keep you posted with that as we continue our coverage of the Pittsburgh Steelers here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back to the call-in lines, because more of y'all got Will Howard questions. We'll get to that and some other looks at the schedule here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, to remind you, this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip: add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture, and it'll double your reach to qualified candidates. It's no wonder that 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh. Nick, let's get to the call-in lines here. We've had a few call-ins this week that we've been addressing. As always, you can call 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute, and we'll try to get your question on the show. This one comes from Emmanuel, or Manny, out in Pittsburgh, asking a Will Howard question. Manny, take it away.
Hey, how you doing today, Chris? My name is Emmanuel Omar. I'm calling from Pittsburgh. I just was looking at your podcast with Mr. Filipaldo, Ray Filipaldo, I think his name is. And you were talking about, you got a great point. Like, we don't have any offensive leaders. I get it. We really don't. But I think Will Howard is going to be one. And I'm not jumping on any bandwagons or anything, but when he didn't play in Kansas, I heard he was hired as a coach. I heard he's big on motivation, like big motivator. What you think about that, man? Did you watch that tape? There's footage where you could just, I guess you type in Will Howard as coach, and it'll show him. So, I think he'll be a great leader. All right, thanks a lot, man. You got a great show going on. I like what you're doing. All right, take care.
Thank you, Emmanuel. As always, you can call like he did at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. I got to be honest. I didn't find the coaches thing he was talking about. I tried looking it up, and it didn't come through to me. But I'll say this about Will Howard. Like, I liked his demeanor, the way that he kind of composed himself and handled himself. I like to talk to him at the combine. I think he has the right brain for, being a quarterback and being a leader at the collegiate level. But Nick, we see a lot of guys have that at the collegiate level. Like, and you can do that and be a really good college quarterback. There's still so many barriers to you becoming that. I mean, that's what Kenny Pickett was for Pitt. You remember that we both covered the 2021 year when they won the ACC championship. I remember us standing on the field next to each other, watching them accept the ACC championship trophy. And we're covering it, and that whole year, Kenny Pickett was the guy who worked with Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin, another part of that team. He's like, when they lost to, I think it was Western Michigan, they said that's not going to happen again. This is our year. We got to make it be our year. And from there, the defense got better, the offense got better. They came together, and they had the best season that Pitt has had in, I think, my lifetime. So Kenny Pickett was a great leader for that, but then it didn't translate to the NFL. So I'm not saying it won't happen for Will Howard because it won't happen for Kenny Pickett, but there are a lot of really good leaders at the college football level that don't turn into that in the NFL level. And I don't think that people should, again, I'm tempering expectations here because some people really want to believe in the Will Howard hype train. And I liked Will Howard. I thought he was a 4th round pick. They got him in the 6th. I thought it was great value. But I think that, again, just like, could he be that guy? Maybe. But he has to put a lot of things together and be a very good player for then those leadership questions, I think, to come to the forefront.
Yeah, and listen, I think this is one of the big boosts for Will Howard. I do think he's a great leader. I mean, he was a captain at Kansas State, obviously won a national championship, was a big part of why they were able to win a national championship too. What I really liked about Will Howard was he had that big game mentality. Like, he played his best football in the big games, right? He plays best football in the college football playoffs. I like that about guys. I do. But yeah, I do think Will, in terms of the attributes to become, let's say, a franchise quarterback, I mean, that is hard to do as a 6th round pick. It's not impossible. It's just very rare. And so I think, when we get on here and talk about Will Howard and we say, don't get your expectations too high, it's not to say that he can't do it, because obviously it could happen. It's in the realm of possibility. We've seen guys do it before, even if it's sparingly over, kind of historical stats. The thing is, he's a 6th round pick. Like, let's have realistic expectations for a 6th round pick. You shouldn't be going into the year thinking your 6th round pick is going to be your franchise quarterback. And so that's kind of just my thought of it is, being realistic about a 6th round pick like that. It's just rare for that guy to become the franchise guy. I think Will, though, in terms of the mental makeup and leadership part of it, I thought that was one of his big boosting points, to be quite honest with you. That's what I heard throughout the process. I mean, the Steelers got 2 of the big leaders on that team in Will Howard and Jack Sawyer. Sawyer was also huge time leader. He was the captain of that team. He was like the Cam Hayward of that group. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he was. And so I love Will Howard's makeup in terms of his intangibles. But, I think in order for the leadership factor to become a huge thing, especially in the NFL, you got to be the guy. Like, that's something you got to be, right? Because these are grown men playing for money. You got to command respect. You got to be that guy. And I think that's part of it. I have no questions that Will Howard's going to be a big-time boost to their locker room. And if he's not starting, he's also going to be a big-time boost, pointing out plays and pointing out things on the sideline to the starters and coaches. He'll do that all the time. But I do think let's temper expectations a little bit. Let's at least see what Will Howard does in a live football game before we say this guy could be the franchise guy. I think it's just a little rich for a 6th round pick.
Even this guy could be a starter. I think that the thing is right now, if I'm the Steelers, if I see Will Howard going neck and neck with Mason Rudolph, okay, then we're like, okay, so he's way ahead of expectations. That would make me raise my eyebrow a little bit. Doesn't mean that he's the guy, but that would make me raise my eyebrow. If he can do that as a rookie, if he can come out and give you that confident sense, then we can get to that. And then you can start asking, okay, well, what more can he put on his shoulders? But we got to see what is his floor in the NFL. Like that is I think his floor can be pretty high, and I think that's why I made him a 4th round pick in my book. He was why I was saying, hey, they should probably get that guy in early day 3. But I think that's the thing though, is that we need to actually see it manifest. He has to show it. He has to show it in practices. He has to show it in preseason games. And if he does that, and again, that doesn't mean a whole lot because Kenny Pickett used to light up the preseason. But he needs to at least show it there and keep taking steps forward with it. And then we'll get to these other questions of, is he the starter? Is he the franchise starter? Is he a leader? Is he those things? And I think that's the big thing there. And the other thing is here is like the Steelers, Kenny Pickett had leadership qualities to him. I know people probably like, oh, what are you talking about? He's stunking, da-da-da. But like, the team voted him as captain. I mean, he did have that aura about him where like they were winning. They had several game-winning drives because of him and the things that he did late in games, and that excited people. And the team got behind it. He was voted a team captain. It's just that when you're voted a team captain and you're a young player and you better come with the playmaking. And when you don't come with the playmaking, you can't be the person that's trying to energize everyone up to do stuff when it's like, dog, you're a part of why we're losing right now. And I think that's the thing that you don't want to see Will Howard fall into by just trying to say, oh yeah, he's a leader, we'll just put him in there right now.
Yeah, I think that's like if Will Howard gets fast tracked and plays way more than we ever thought he would, it's going to be because he's good. Like that's what I would say, right? It's not necessarily going to be because he's a leader. It's going to be because he is straight up just balling on the football field. I think that's what it's going to be like. And listen, you talk about the floor of Will Howard. I think it's incredibly high for a 6th-round pick. I think we're going to see this guy in the league
for a 6th rounder, yes.
Like I really think we're going to see this guy in the league for a decade. Like I really do. I think he's that type of player. But like if he even starts a game this year, it's like a mild surprise. It's not impossible. I think last year like 8 of the 32 teams started 3 quarterbacks or more in a season. So I mean, certainly not impossible for Will Howard to start a game or 2 or even a few more than that. But let's see what he does in that opportunity. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Will Howard does this summer. I am. I like him. I like his deep ball. I like his fit in the offense. I thought he plays best football. The footwork, I think, is fixed. I thought that was his biggest issue. I think they fixed that late in the year at Ohio State. So I'm excited to see what he can do. But, I think putting any franchise-changing expectations on him right now, it's rich. And so he's playing with house money. If I'm Will Howard, I'm playing loose. I'm playing with house money. I can do whatever. But if fans want to have that enthusiasm, go for it. I'm not going to temper your enthusiasm on it. I will just say, I'm having realistic expectations, it's probably less likely that he's going to be your franchise changer, and that includes the leadership part of that because franchise changers are great leaders. And so for him to become that leader and flash that leadership, he's going to have to become the guy.
Absolutely. And I think that's just, it's a lot to put that on him now. We'll see how that continues. When we come back, I want to talk about a post by Warren Sharp. He did some analytics on the Steelers schedule and why it could be even harder than what we talked about when the schedule got released last week. We'll do that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Nick Farabaugh. Stick with us. We'll be right back. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Nick Farabaugh. Nick, let's talk about something that Will Sharp pointed out. Of course, Will Sharp, at Sharp Football, he always does his analytics and brings things out. Now, he did some breakdowns on the Steelers schedule, and he said on Twitter, he was talking about the Steelers have the number 1 toughest schedule of opponents from week 7 on into the rest of the season. He says they have the number 2 toughest rest and prep schedule, talking about when it comes to how many days off versus how many days you have leading into a game. And he said they have rest scheduling disadvantages in 5 of their 6 toughest games. And that's based off of just the opponent's record the previous year. And he said the Steelers' brutal opponents and brutal rest disadvantages from week 7 through 16. He said they have a 3-day rest disadvantage against the Bills, 3-day rest disadvantage against the Ravens, a 1-day rest disadvantage against the Lions, a whole week disadvantage against the Bengals, and a short road game against the Bengals on Thursday Night Football, where we know they have never beaten in the Mike Tomlin era. They have not beaten a road divisional opponent on Thursday Night Football. And granted, most teams stink in that situation when you're on the road on a short week against a divisional opponent, but to Warren Sharp's point, these are a lot of disadvantages. Nick, we never got a chance to talk to you about the schedule. I did feel like they got stuck with a gauntlet towards the end of the season. 4 out of their last 6 games are going to be against legit Super Bowl contenders. But I hadn't even looked at the compilation of how many weeks they were going to have maybe a disadvantage as far as their rest here. Do you see this as being a bigger problem, or do you think this is just more of the same in the NFL, and this is going to really still come down to just how good are the Steelers actually this year?
It's probably going to come down to how good they are. I mean, listen, they had a week 5 bye, so that's always going to put you generally at a rest disadvantage. So that just kind of factors in there. I also think they're the Steelers. They're always going to have an end of the season gauntlet. Like I don't. We've talked about this for 3 or 4 straight years now. Every year when you prove you're 10-7, 9-8, and you're playoff relevant down to the end of the season, the NFL is going to schedule you in playoff relevant and good games. Why do the Steelers play all their bad games early in the year and all the tough teams late in the year? Because they're reliably playoff relevant. Like, that's why. Look at the times of all those games. The Bills, it's a late window afternoon. The Lions, late window afternoon. Chargers, Sunday Night Football. Packers, Sunday Night Football. So from like week 8 on, they are in very, very relevant games. Monday Night Football against the Dolphins, that's probably going to be a playoff relevant game. And then you look at other games, right? You look at Baltimore in week 14, the TBD in 18. All of those games, extremely flex-worthy games for Pittsburgh. The reason they are in gauntlets at the end of the year is because they are playoff relevant. The league knows they get views. They are a national, worldwide brand. So if you're wondering why do the Steelers keep getting this gauntlet at the end of the year? That's why. They have a standard of success, and the league knows they're probably going to be 7-7, 7-6, 8-5. They're going to be somewhere around there, and every single one of their games matters until week 18. They're never eliminated. They're always in the divisional race, and they're always in the wild card race. That's why they play these teams. So is it tough for them? Yes, it is. But it's probably going to be more about how well they play than it is about this rest disadvantage. The 49ers get put with this rest disadvantage every year too, because they're a similar team where very often in the Kyle Shanahan era, they have been playoff relevant. They had the worst rest disadvantage the year they went to the Super Bowl, so that didn't matter much. Now, they had a very similar rest disadvantage last year. The injuries racked up, but a lot of that's luck related. So, yeah, I'm not sure it's going to be a huge, huge problem for the Steelers. It's going to be about how well they play and how good this team comes together.
I also think that rest disadvantages also hit older teams a lot harder. Like, you remember that 2020 team? A lot of people like to go back and say, oh, that 2020 team was such a fraud. And, like, look, they certainly were overperforming early in the season. But they fell apart once they lost their bye week, and then they had to deal with, I think it was the Ravens game that was supposed to be on one day. They got pushed back 3 different times, and that messed up their whole week, and that set up a short week for playing the Commanders. And that was an old team. They had Pouncey on his last year, DeCastro on his last year. Ben was 1 year out from retiring. Like, they had a lot of older guys on that team, and so when they had to adjust to the crazy week adjustments, that was a disadvantage, and that team just did not recover at that stage of the season. This team does have some older guys like that. Cam Hayward, Darius Slay, TJ Watt's starting to get up there, and guys like that. But by and large, like this is a team where most of your offensive players are on their rookie deals. Like, this is a team that could, if they hit their stride early. This is why I think a big part of the Steelers' schedule isn't necessarily about just surviving the gauntlet. It's doing well enough in these early games at the Jets, home against the Seahawks, at the Patriots, home against the Browns, finding a way to at least get 2 out of 3 or not say 2 out of 4 with those games against the Packers, Colts, Chargers, and Bengals in a 4-week order. Making sure you get through those first 11 games on your schedule with at least 7 wins. If you can go into week 13 with at least 7 wins, you just need to win half the games on out, which means if you can beat the Dolphins, the Browns, and then upset either the Ravens once, the Bills, or the Lions, that means that gets you back to 10 wins there. And that could be a way to do it. But to me, it's about finding yourself early in the season. That, to me, is going to be a huge part of this year. Nick, I think they have to find a way to hit the ground running, find their feet, whether it's a running team, pass it, whatever it is. That if they find a strength, get it on the board there and let it get some wins. And then that way, when you get later in the year, you're relying on that strength to get you through some of those tougher disadvantages.
Yeah, and I do think one thing that makes this year less daunting than last year is, one, they don't have 6 of 8 divisional games in the last 8. And then on top of that, they had Thursday Night Football late in the year last year at Cleveland. And then they had that weird Wednesday going on to Christmas against the Chiefs. They have nothing like that this year. In fact, they have a nice little break after the Baltimore Ravens game on December 7th. They have 8 days. which I
Yeah.
think actually works to their advantage. They're going to be at Baltimore. That's going to be a super physical game. It always is. And they have 8 days to prepare for the Dolphins. I think that actually is nice for them. Even if it's late in the year and you're going to have only 6 to play then the Lions, I do think having that rest period built in after Cincy in week 7 before you play a really good Packers team, and then built in 8-day rest period there when you face the Ravens into the Dolphins, I think that's at least helpful for the Steelers. So this is not as tough as last year. I don't think, and I've said this before, I don't think we're going to ever see a tougher schedule than what they got last year. It was an absolute gauntlet. 6 of 8 divisional games, and the 2 teams they played went to the Super Bowl. That is going to be an absolute all-timer, I think, when you look back on it, not just in Steelers schedules, but in schedules, period. So I don't think this is nearly as daunting as last year. Is it tough? Sure. They were going to play the 9th hardest schedule in the league anyways, and they were always going to play their tougher opponents later in the year just because of the fact that they are the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so that's really what this comes down to.
The price of winning, man. And I know people are going to say, well, they're not winning a lot. Like, they're winning enough, like to Nick said, to be playoff relevant and not to be in the play. They've been in the playoffs 4 of the last 5 years. That there's in Mike Tomlin's 18 years of coaching now, there's been 1 game the Steelers have ever played that didn't have playoff implications. 1. That is impressive, and that's part of what plays into why they want to get them on the schedule, because they know if we're scheduling the Steelers in December, that's a game that people are tuning in because either they or someone else are battling for a playoff spot, and that's going to be a slugfest. So I do think that's part of what happens there. But like you, I don't think this is that big of a disadvantage. I think it is unfortunate. I think like it's kind of crazy that if you look at it and you see like, okay, well, how do the Bengals get a 7-day a 7-day advantage on the Steelers when they play the Steelers in Pittsburgh, and then also get the short road week to come into Cincinnati? Like, that seems a double dipping there. But at the same time, like, I think it's just one of those things where you got to overcome that kind of stuff. And especially, again, the Steelers are a younger team now. They can overcome that stuff if a lot of those guys we talked about in the first segment, Broderick Jones, Joey Porter Jr., Keeanu Benton, if them and that crew start to stand up and make out to be new playmakers for the Steelers to bank on, then maybe you're singing a different tune come December and June about this, or September and January when it comes to the schedule.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference, man. It's a tough schedule. They naturally are going to play a tough schedule also because they play in the AFC North. That's a really good division. And they play the NFC North this year, which is like the top 2 divisions in football. Like, it's going to be a tough schedule no matter what. So they were going to have a tough one. And I don't think it's as bad. They play on Sunday on most of these games. That's at least the change, right? They're going to have a full week to prepare. They're not going to have most of these crazy changes. So I think that works in their advantage. So the schedule, it's tough. But I also think even late in the year now, they have like a reprieve game there. They had those 2 Cleveland games, which for your reprieve games, being your divisional rival, is not great. But the Steelers at least have the Browns late in the year. They have the Colts week 9, not expected to be a great team. So they have a few games where they can at least lay low a little bit in the late part of the year, but still was going to be a tough schedule. But this is not like out of bounds or anything. Last year was out of bounds. That was crazy.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. But there you have it. The schedule may be rough on the Steelers, but it's not nearly as crazy what they have been through. We'll see how they progress through it. Again, OTAs opens up next week. We still got more to discuss. We've got Shelby Cassesi on from Channel 11 coming on tomorrow. Tune in for that. Nick, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on X at Farabaugh FB. You can follow me on Blue Sky at Nick Farabaugh, and make sure to check out the Penn Live YouTube channel, Steelers Blitz, and the stuff I write over at PennLive.com.
Absolutely. He's Nick Farabaugh. I'm Chris Carter. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social media handles, all the same handle everywhere, at Carter Critiques. You can read me at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can find me here every Monday through Friday on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of the Monday through Friday episodes of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Back tomorrow with Shelby Cassesi of Channel 11 right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.